Welcome back to the deep dive.
Yeah.
And today we are doing something that, honestly, it feels a little bit like detective work.
It really does, yeah.
Because usually when we sit down to record, we have a very clear topic, like the future of AI or the history of the steam engine or something.
Right, a specific subject.
Exactly. But today I'm looking at this huge stack of research you've prepared for us, and there isn't a single topic. There's literally just a date.
Just one date, February 24.
Right. And I have to admit, when I first scanned this, I thought you might have, lost the plot a little bit.
I don't blame you.
I mean, I'm seeing a Civil War-era doctor, a violent political coup in West Africa, a boxing champion in Las Vegas, a museum opening in Morocco, and Lauryn Hill at the Grammys.
Quite the lineup.
It's wild. It feels like someone just shuffled a deck of history cards and picked 5 at random. But you're arguing this isn't random at all, right?
Right. I mean, it absolutely feels like trivia until you layer them on top of each other. Then it starts to look less like a random calendar date and more like a map.
A map. Okay.
Yeah, we're calling this the Unbroken Chain. Because if you look at February 24, across, well, about 150 years, you see this very specific pulse. It's a recurring story about African and diasporic agency.
Agency.
Exactly. Specifically, it's about the struggle to claim institutions.
Claiming institutions. That's actually the key phrase here. Because when I really dug into the reading, I realized that in every single one of these stories, someone is either breaking into a room they were completely locked out of, or
they're building a completely new room entirely.
Yes, exactly.
It's about moving from being the object of history, right? Like the person being studied or governed or traded, moving from that to being the subject. The one running the hospital, the one writing the laws, the one owning the masters.
And we have a ton of ground to cover today for everyone listening. We are bouncing from Boston to Dakar, Accra to Las Vegas. So let's just start right at the bedrock. We have to go all the way back to February 24, 1864.
The foundation of the chain.
We are in Boston, Massachusetts, and context is everything here. The American Civil War is, it's still raging.
Oh, absolutely. It's not history yet. It's the daily news.
Right. And amidst all that chaos, a woman named Rebecca Lee Crumpler is doing something that seems, frankly, statistically impossible for the era.
It was statistically impossible. On that very day, February 24, 1864, Rebecca Lee Crumpler became the first black woman in the United States to receive a medical degree.
Wow.
Yeah. She graduated from the New England Female Medical College.
I really want to pause on that because it's so easy to just say she got a degree and move on. But the research notes highlight something really interesting about her background. She didn't just, walk into medical school on a whim.
No, not at all.
She had been a nurse for nearly a decade in Charlestown, Massachusetts, so she was already doing the work.
She was. And that distinction is vital. Because in the mid-19th century, nursing was often this informal domestic role.
Right, it was seen as women's work.
Exactly. Women's work, but not necessarily professional work in the eyes of the establishment. So by going for the MD, Crumpler was crossing a very specific line. She was professionalizing her knowledge.
She was forcing the establishment to recognize her not just as a helper, but as an absolute authority.
She was demanding the credentials.
Yes.
But here is where it gets really interesting for me, looking at the sources. It's not just about the piece of paper. It's what she did with it. Because most people in her position, having achieved this incredibly rare status, they might have just stayed in Boston.
Oh, for sure. Set up a comfortable practice.
Exactly. She could have catered to the elite, maybe wealthy women in the North. It would have been the safer play, by far.
But she didn't do that. The sources say that immediately after the war ended, she packed up and went south.
She went straight to Richmond, Virginia. She actually signed up with the Freedmen's Bureau.
Which, for those listening who might not know, that was the government agency tasked with helping newly freed enslaved people transition to freedom during Reconstruction.
Right. And we really have to be clear about what that environment was like. The health conditions for freed people were catastrophic.
Just awful.
We're talking about outbreaks of smallpox, cholera, basically zero infrastructure. And on top of that, many white physicians absolutely refused to treat formerly enslaved people.
It was a full-blown humanitarian crisis.
It was. So Dr. Crumpler takes her shiny new credential, this ultimate symbol of elite institutional access, and she just wades right into the mud of a public health crisis.
She connects the institution, the medical degree, directly to the community that was being actively locked out of it.
She is the bridge. And she didn't just practice medicine down there, she documented it. In 1883, she published a book of medical discourses.
Which is noted in the sources as one of the very earliest medical texts written by an African American.
And if you look at the content of that book, it wasn't some high-level abstract theory written to impress other doctors at a fancy conference.
Right.
It was a practical guide for women and children. It was about nutrition, teething, preventative care. She was completely democratizing the knowledge.
She's basically saying, I have this specialized knowledge, and I'm going to write it down in plain language so you can keep your own children alive.
Precisely. She is foreshadowing a struggle that we see for the entire next century, the fight against health disparities.
Yeah.
From the lack of access in the Jim Crow South, all the way to the maternal mortality crisis that Black women still face today.
Yeah.
Crumpler is the prototype for that resistance. She planted a flag that said, "We belong in this room, and we are going to write the books."
That is just such a powerful start to the chain. So if 1864 was about an individual breaking into a white institution to serve her community, our next stop is about a community deciding to build their own institution.
We're jumping forward almost 100 years now. Same date, February 24, but now it's 1957.
And we are crossing the Atlantic over to Dakar, Senegal.
This is a huge pivotal moment in West Africa. The winds of change are blowing hard. Independence movements are bubbling up everywhere.
Ghana is about to become free, right?
Exactly. And Senegal is very close. And on this day, the colonial administration merges the École de Médecine de Dakar with several other schools to form the Institut des Hautes Études de Dakar.
Which translates to the Institute of Higher Studies, which I have to say sounds very dry and bureaucratic.
It really does, but it was revolutionary. Because this was the chrysalis that became the University of Dakar, which we now know as Cheikh Anta Diop University, or UCAD.
Named after the great historian and anthropologist Cheikh Anta Diop.
The very same. The man who dedicated his entire life to scientifically proving the African origins of civilization. But here's why this specific date, the founding of this institute, why it matters so much. Before this, if you were in French West Africa and you wanted a real degree...
Like a degree that commanded actual respect in the global marketplace.
Right, where did you have to go?
You went to Paris. You went to the metropole.
Exactly. You had to leave home to become an expert.
Yeah.
And more importantly, you had to learn about your own home through the lens of the colonizer.
Because all the archives, the history books, the botanical studies, they were all hoarded and stored in Europe.
They were holding the data hostage in a way. So by establishing a full-fledged university infrastructure right there in Dakar, with faculties of law, science, medicine, arts, they were completely shifting the center of gravity.
Yeah.
They were creating what the sources call intellectual infrastructure.
It really reminds me of the concept of brain drain. Usually we talk about talent leaving a developing area. This was a deliberate attempt to create a reservoir to keep the talent in.
And to control the narrative. Think about it. It's the difference between renting knowledge and owning the factory.
Wow. Yeah.
February 24, 1957 was the day they decided to own the factory. This institution would go on to produce the civil servants, the doctors, and the thinkers who would actually try to run these newly independent nations.
So we have the body in 1864 with Crumpler. We have the mind in 1957 with the university. But as we know, having smart people and good intentions doesn't guarantee safety.
No, it doesn't. And that brings us to the heaviest part of this timeline. Because real power, political power, state power, it's a dangerous game. And sometimes the chain snaps.
We're staying in West Africa for this next one, but moving down the coast to Accra, Ghana. The date is February 24th, 1966.
9 years after the university in Dakar is founded. We are looking at the fall of an absolute giant, Kwame Nkrumah.
The first president of Ghana, the face of Pan-Africanism. I mean, this guy was a legend in his own time.
He was the vision. He didn't just want to free Ghana. He wanted a United States of Africa. He was pushing for rapid industrialization. He was a staunch socialist, and he was vehemently anti-imperialist.
He wanted total independence from Western influence.
Complete independence. But on February 24, 1966, while he was actually on a peace mission in Vietnam, the military moved him back home.
Operation Cold Chop, that was the code name.
Yeah. The police and military seized the government house, the radio stations, the airport, everything. They established the National Liberation Council.
So by the time Nkrumah landed in Beijing on his way back, he was literally a president without a country.
It happened that fast.
Now, the sources here are careful, and I think we need to be balanced, too, for our listeners. Nkrumah wasn't universally loved by the end of his run, was he?
No, not at all. There were very legitimate internal grievances. The economy was really struggling. There were massive shortages. And he had essentially turned Ghana into a one-party state.
Right. He was suppressing the political opposition.
He gave his domestic enemies plenty of ammunition. There's no denying that.
But you also can't ignore the external context here. The timeline puts this right at the absolute height of the Cold War.
Absolutely. The CIA and other Western intelligence agencies were deeply, deeply suspicious of Nkrumah's socialist leanings and his ties to the Soviet bloc.
Yeah.
Declassified documents have shown that Western powers were, let's say, aware and supportive of the plotters. They definitely wanted him gone.
So the sources kind of present this date as a reversal point in our chain.
It shows the extreme fragility of the state. Think about it. Crumpler built a career. Dakar built a university. Nkrumah tried to build a new geopolitical reality, and it was dismantled in a single day.
It was a stark signal to the rest of the continent. Like, political independence on paper does not mean you are actually safe.
It brings up that old saying, who guards the guards? In this case, the very military institutions Nkrumah helped build turned right around and ousted him.
It's a really harsh lesson in where power actually resides. Is it in the visionary ideas, or is it just in the guys holding the guns?
Exactly.
Well, if 1966 taught us that state power is fragile, our next stop on the timeline offers a completely different, almost radical solution to the problem of power. We are leaving the world of geopolitics entirely and entering
The boxing ring.
the boxing ring. And I know you're going to look at me funny again.
I am, because we are jumping to February 24th, 1977, Grand Rapids, Michigan. The birth of Floyd Mayweather Jr.
I know.
We're going from a Pan-African head of state to Money Mayweather.
Bear with me on this one. If Nkrumah was the ultimate pursuit of state power, Mayweather represents the ultimate pursuit of sovereign individual power.
Okay, let's unpack that, because Mayweather is obviously a highly polarizing figure. But the sources suggest his career represents a massive structural shift in how black labor is valued.
Think about the long history of the black athlete, going all the way back to the boxing rings on plantations, where enslaved men were literally forced to fight.
Right.
Then to the Negro Leagues, to early boxing, to even the modern NFL. The dynamic is almost always the same. The athlete provides the body, the sweat, the talent, and the physical risk. But the ownership class...
Usually white promoters and owners.
Exactly. They control the money, the contracts, and the long-term equity.
It's the classic Don King model. The promoter gets wildly rich, and the fighter ends up broke with permanent brain damage.
The athlete is just an employee. But Mayweather looked at that history and just said, no. He recognized that he wasn't just an employee, he was the product itself.
So he bought himself out of his contract with Top Rank, which, by the way, was a huge, huge financial gamble at the time.
A massive gamble. But he became his own promoter. He bet on himself, literally.
He created a completely new business model where he took all the risk but kept all the reward. He leveraged the pay-per-view model to generate generational wealth without ever having to answer to a boss.
And he retired 50-0 on his own terms with hundreds of millions of dollars.
So in the context of our chain, if the University of Dakar was about owning the intellectual factory, Mayweather is about owning the labor factory.
He turned his own physical body into a corporation. He built this fortress of cash around himself that made him untouchable in a way that Nkrumah, frankly, wasn't.
That's a great point. Nkrumah relied on the loyalty of generals and the goodwill of the people, which are famously fickle. Mayweather just relied on the ironclad contract and the bank account.
It's a very cynical form of freedom, maybe, but you can't argue it's not effective.
It's the unbroken chain adapting to late-stage capitalism. If the system won't let you run the country, then you just buy the block. You create a sovereign state of one.
Buy the block. That's a really good transition, because once you have the money and you have the security, you start thinking about legacy. You start thinking about the story you're telling to the world.
The narrative. This brings us right into the arts.
We have 2 events left on our February 24 timeline. One visual, one sonic. Let's start with the visual. Fast forward to February 24, 2018. We are in Marrakech, Morocco.
The opening of MACAAL, the Museum of African Contemporary Art, Al Maiden.
Now, you look at this and think, museums open all the time. Why is this specific one a crucial link in the chain?
Well, think about the traditional African exhibit in a classic Western museum in London or New York. What do you usually see?
Wooden masks, bronze statues, usually behind glass with a little placard saying 19th century artist unknown.
Exactly. It's treated as ethnography, not art.
Yeah.
It's presented as an artifact of a dead or static culture.
Right. It's looking at Africa. It treats African creativity as an object to be studied.
The MACAAL is the exact opposite. It's about looking from Africa. It was a private initiative officially inaugurated on this date, and it's dedicated entirely to contemporary African art. The opening exhibition was literally titled, "Africa is No Island."
That title feels very deliberate.
Oh, it is. It's a direct rejection of isolation. It's saying we are part of the global conversation right now. We are modern. We are cartographers. We are sculptors, digital artists.
It's an African institution on African soil defining for itself what African art is.
They are seizing the power of curation. Because as we know, whoever curates the museum ultimately defines the culture.
And they are telling the local Moroccan audience, this is for you. It's not just an attraction for European tourists. It's about mirroring the community back to itself, which is something Dr. Crumpler would have understood perfectly back in 1864.
That's an incredible connection. Mirroring the community back to itself.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, we have one final stop on our timeline. And I think for many of the people listening, this one's going to hit the hardest emotionally.
I think so too. February 24th, 1999, Los Angeles, the Staples Center, the 41st Annual Grammy Awards.
The coronation of Lauryn Hill.
I remember watching this live on TV. It felt like a literal shift in the atmosphere. She wins 5 Grammys that night, including Album of the Year for The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
It was completely historic. She was the first woman ever to win 5 in a single night, and the first hip-hop artist to win Album of the Year.
But we really have to look at what won, because this wasn't a polished, safe, focus-grouped pop record designed to sell soda.
No, it was incredibly raw. It was a deeply personal breakup album. It was a spiritual album. It was a biting critique of the music industry itself.
She was rapping, she was singing, she was pulling in reggae and doo-wop.
The sources describe it as a sonic diaspora. She took all these different threads of Black musical history, gospel, soul, hip-hop, and wove them into something that felt so intimately personal.
And the Academy, which is arguably one of the most conservative, exclusionary institutions in the entire entertainment industry, they basically had to bow down to it.
Why does this fit the unbroken chain for you? Is it just about representation?
I think it's about the concept of the universal. For a very long time, the default universal story, the kind of album that wins Album of the Year, was a white story. Maybe a rock band, maybe a pop star.
Right. Hip-hop was considered niche, it was urban, it was categorized over there in the corner.
Exactly. Good for that specific crowd, but not for everyone.
But Lauryn Hill forced the mainstream to accept that a Black woman's diary, her specific, culturally rooted, unapologetic experience, was the most significant universal artistic statement of the year.
She centered her own humanity, and the world had to adjust to her, not the other way around. She didn't code switch.
She didn't code switch at all. Just like Crumpler didn't just treat white patients to gain respect, just like Mayweather didn't let a white promoter run his books, she maintained absolute creative sovereignty.
So when we step back and look at this entire pulse of February 24, it's quite a picture. 1864, Crumpler claims the medical profession.
1957, Dakar claims the intellectual future.
1966, Nkrumah loses the political state, showing us the danger of the work.
1977, Mayweather is born, eventually rewriting the rules of economic ownership.
And 1999 and 2018, Lauryn Hill and MACAAL reclaim the cultural narrative.
It's an evolution of agency. You literally see the strategy shifting over time. It starts with, let us in. Then it moves to, let us build our own. Then let us rule. Then let us own. And finally, let us speak.
It really challenges the whole idea that history is just a series of random events. When you drill down into the sources like this, you see the effort. You see the friction.
You see the work. None of these things were just given. Every single one was a massive fight against the status quo of that specific year.
And that leads me to a provocative thought I've been chewing on since I first read your brief. We really have 2 very different models of success highlighted here. We have the Mayweather and Crumpler model, where you master the tools of the current system.
The reformist approach, or the infiltration approach. You get inside the building to change it. You get the degree, you make the money, you beat them at their own game.
Right. And then you have the Nkrumah model, where you try to build a completely new house, a totally new system. Pan-Africanism, socialism, you reject the old rules entirely.
Revolutionary approach.
Looking at this chain, for you listening right now, which one actually works? Nkrumah was overthrown, Mayweather retired undefeated. Is the lesson from these sources that true autonomy only comes from playing the game better than the house?
That is the eternal question, isn't it? The Mayweather path offers safety and individual sovereignty. You survive. You thrive.
Yeah.
But the Nkrumah path, the path of changing the entire structure for everyone, that's where the collective hope lies.
Yeah.
But it's also where all the danger lies.
The chain seems to suggest you almost need both. You need the protection of the institution, but you need the vision of the revolution.
And maybe that's exactly what MACAAL and Lauryn Hill represent in the modern era. They are highly successful within the system. They are selling millions of records. They are opening internationally recognized museums.
But the content is revolutionary.
Yes, they are smuggling the revolution inside the shiny package of the institution.
Smuggling the revolution. I really like that. It makes you wonder what is happening today, right now, somewhere in the world on February 24, that we won't even understand for another 20 years.
Someone is undoubtedly planting a new flag today. We just don't see it yet.
Yeah.
Which part of the chain is being forged right now?
Well, to everyone listening, check the date on your calendar. You might be part of the chain and not even know it. Thanks for taking this dive with us.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive. Stay curious.